Sachin Sunny, and welcome to my podcast. We communicate, we have conversations, we connect with people because life is all about this connection, this meaningful connection that we create every time we meet somebody. But most of the times, around 90% of the time, when we communicate, we fail to do that. We fail to connect as one. We fail to connect with the person that we are talking to because we often communicate not to convey informations, not just to connect with other persons, but we communicate because we want to fulfill the need that we are trying to convey. But oftentimes, when we communicate, the other person who is listening to us often misinterpret that information because he is looking through his own lenses, through his perceptual filters. So he's looking through his own eyes. So when he looks through his own eyes, he doesn't see what I am trying to say. He sees what he wants to see. He hears what he wants to hear. He doesn't hear what I am telling him. He hears only what he wants to hear. This happens all the times when we communicate to people. We are looking at the problem from our own perceptual filters. So we don't see what they are seeing. We see what we are seeing because we only see what we want to see, and our needs are different. My need, your needs, everyone's needs, they are different. They are unique. But if you want to have a connection, if you want to have a meaningful conversation, meaningful communication that will have a great impact on our lives, we need to use the four pillars. The four pillars. So what are these four pillars? Last time when I was in Hyderabad, I was a communicate English trainer. Right? So I was teaching my kids about the strategies that we can use in our daily conversations to have a very effective communication. So as I was teaching this, I heard a knock on the door. So I opened the door and there was the peon. So he told me that I wanted to be at the office immediately. I was quite busy because I was teaching there, and I told him, okay, I would be back soon. Please just give me a few seconds. And I just locked the door and I began to teach again. But then a few minutes later, again, I heard the second knock. I was slightly, angry, but I didn't show that. I opened the door and with a smile, I told him, okay, I would be back soon. Without listening to him, I closed the door, continued teaching, and a few minutes back, again, there was a peon again. So when he knocked at the door, I opened it, and I was now angry, and I couldn't control myself. And I looked at him. Before he could say, I said, I told you I would be back. Now please go away. I said this, I locked the door, and looked at the children. Now they were, looking at me like they were frightened. Because all the time I had been teaching them how to communicate effectively, how to have a meaningful conversations and effective strategies to avoid misinterpretations of communication. But now what I am doing is I was just telling them just the opposite of what I've been teaching them. So I was devastated. I just got off the classroom and I didn't teach them that day. I was really disappointed. I was disappointed at my own action. So I thought, my God, what happened? Now the reason is because I wasn't willing to listen to that person. I wasn't willing to understand from his own perspective. I was not willing to look through his eyes. What I lacked was empathy. I didn't have the empathy. I didn't show the empathy. Empathy is, putting your legs on someone else's shoes. Empathy is, trying to look through other people's eyes, trying to look at a, problem, not from our own perspective, from other people's perspective. This comes from an understanding of what the other person is going through, what the other person is experiencing. And using empathy, we can build our conversations, more meaningful, because empathy is the basic thing. It will help us to understand each other. Now, we have a neuron called mirror neurons. So now the mirror neuron, what they do is they just mirror or they reflect the other person's feeling to us. So imagine you're having a very bad time. Your very trusted, close friend comes to you, and when he comes there, he look at you and he knows what you're exactly feeling. He knows how, what kind of problem you're going through, because he has this mirror neuron reflecting your feeling to him. So we have this, neuron. It's a marvelous, it's a beautiful thing, because it will help us to understand what other people are going through. And when we understand, we can connect with them. So that's all about this empathy. So when we empathize with others, we see what that person is going through, and thereby by understanding, by having an understanding of what the other person is experiencing, we can start our conversations, or we can start a meaningful conversation, because now we know what that the other person is going through. So the first pillar is having empathy. The second one is having or showing compassion. A few years back, I was in Hyderabad, so I was there a communicating English trainer. So I got my salary and I was going to the bank to send some money to my parents. So I reached as I reached my bank, I saw a man sitting there, and he had a wound on his leg, and it was really, really bad. And I felt very sympathy for that man, because I could feel how that person was feeling. So I just stopped there, and he asked me 1 rupee. So when he asked me 1 rupee, it was just like 1 cent. So when he asked me 1 rupee, okay, I stopped by and I took my purse and I gave him 100 rupee. So when I took out that 100 rupee and kept on his hand, he looked at me marvelously and he said, "Dear son, I don't need this money. I only need 1 rupee." And when I said that, I didn't know what happened. I didn't know, how it happened. But I knew this. I looked at his eyes and I said, "This is not my money, this is yours." And I kept it in his hand. And he took it and he folded his hands and bowed his head in respect. And as I looked into his eyes, I didn't know what I saw there, but I felt something different. I felt something that I had never ever felt before. Some kind of, a different feeling of happiness, joy, this feeling of, overwhelming excitement. I still don't know whether there is any word that could be used to describe that feeling, because I had never ever felt that, and I began to cry in front of the crowd. I couldn't control my tears. Now, it was not the tears of pain. It was not the tears of sadness or sorrow. It was the tears of joy. I was really experiencing what it feels like, what it feels like being compassionate. I was extending my heart to that person. And this is all about our conversations. When we are, when we are communicating with others, it's all about extending our hearts to other person, extending our awareness to other persons. It's about lending a hand to somebody who is in trouble. It's about, taking the hand of the person who is in need and trying to grab him and put him in a comfortable position. It's about us, connection. And compassion will help us to connect to one another. Compassion will help us to be one instead of to be you and me. There isn't you and me, there is only we. And this we comes when you and me know each other through empathy, and when you and me come together to help each other, compassion. And the third pillar is courage. A few years back, I happened to listen to a story of my mentor. So he told me about this incident that while he was, going to his office, he saw a woman protesting against the government because her husband was arrested for a crime that he had not committed. So she was standing in front of the collectorate office, and she was protesting against the government, trying to grab the attention of the people, trying to tell others that her husband was innocent, because he was indeed innocent, and there wasn't anybody to stand by her. Because there wasn't any evidence, and people, all the evidence was against him. So while he was going, he knew that he wasn't, he hadn't committed the crime. So he stood there, he listened to her, and then he stood by that woman. And a few days later, some more people came, and more people came, and more people came, and finally she was able to release her husband from the jail. It was not her own action. It was, first, she had the courage to stand for her husband, and second, my mentor, he had the courage, he showed the courage to stand, because he was alone. People criticized him, people abandoned him for that reason, but he wasn't ready to give up. He had the courage to stand for that justice. So, our conversations, our communications can become, more better, more meaningful when we have the courage to show who we truly are, when we have the courage to accept what others are. Most of the times we don't accept others because we don't have the courage. That's simply the reason. We don't have the courage to encourage others to come forward. We often, we inspire not because we want them to come out of that misery, because oftentimes it's out of our own selfish behaviors. So courage means this, just getting out of that comfort zone and going outside that comfort zone to help others. It could be either for yourself or for others. So have the courage. And the next pillar is vulnerability. So vulnerability is, the word vulnerability is itself vulnerable. And you might think, how could a vulnerability, the pillar vulnerability could be a pillar, right? But it is a pillar because we are vulnerable. Because humans are vulnerable. Because we tend to make mistake, we tend to fail, we tend to get disappointed, we tend to have a lot of ups and downs, disappointments, sad things happen, bad things happen. So we are vulnerable. We tend to make mistake. We tend to do the same mistake again and again because it's a part of us. And we are vulnerable. Accept yourself. Accept that you're vulnerable. Accept that you do tend to make mistakes. We are not perfect. We are not gods. We are not machines. We are not superhumans. We are just humans. But we have the super capacity to rise again once we fall. We have the super capacity to make the things right that we've been committing wrong. We have the super capacity to stand strong when the storm is getting harder. Because we accept ourselves. Because we fall and because we rise again. So this vulnerability is part of us. Just like, the strength that we have, the vulnerability is a part of us that makes us who we are. So when we accept ourselves, who I am, when we accept what I am, when we accept the bad side, the good side, the positive sides, the negative sides, and when we accept ourselves, we can accept others. We can accept their disappointing sides, their angry sides, their sad sides, their good sides and bad sides. And it is this acceptance that will help us to connect to one another. And therefore, be vulnerable. Be vulnerable. At the same time, accept who are vulnerable too. So when we use these 4 pillars, when we show empathy, when we empathize with others, we tend to not look through our eyes but through others. And when we use compassion, we extend our hearts to other people. And then we show courage to stand up, to stand for somebody else, to stand for ourselves, and using vulnerability. By accepting vulnerability, by accepting our and others' vulnerability, we invite others to connect with us. And it is this quality that makes us who we are.